Hello and welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm Logan Finney. The Idaho Legislature has adjourned business for 2025. Here to look at one of the bills that passed into law is Margaret Carmel of BoiseDev.com. Margaret, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So we're here to talk about urban renewal. The legislature passed a bill that had three pretty substantial changes to Idaho's urban renewal process this year. We're looking at House Bill 436. But first, just for folks who aren't urban planners and don't work for a city, remind us what is urban renewal and how does it work a little bit different than other taxing schemes in Idaho?
Yeah, there's a couple things that set it apart. The first thing is that urban renewal districts are run by urban renewal agencies that are created by cities, but they are their own entity and they have their own rules. And what they do is they create districts, they draw a boundary, and then inside that boundary, what happens is whenever tax revenue goes up beyond, what it was at the level when they drew that boundary, that extra tax money can be used for projects to improve things just inside that district. So it basically takes extra tax revenue as it grows from cities, highway district, although I think that has changed now, fire districts, all sorts of taxing entities, public schools, and it uses that to do infrastructure, build parks, build improvements, build bike lanes like you see in downtown Boise, or do improvements to infrastructure to entice a business to come, and like what they do in Twin Falls to make the deal to get Chobani and Cliff Bar to come open down in the Magic Valley. And so that is a lot of legislators who defend this urban renewal say it's one of the few tools that local governments can use in Idaho to try to improve an area that needs improving or entice large employers to come and set up shop here.
I mean, it's right there in the name, right? Urban renewal. By definition, the goal is to be redeveloping a piece of land. And so when the urban renewal district is set up, we take basically like a snapshot, right? So everybody who's been getting taxes in that area, those districts keep their taxes, but any of the growth stays sequestered away in this urban renewal district.
Yes, and that extra growth, the idea is that if it's used to improve things in that area, then more business will come. If the sidewalks are nicer, if the roads are in better shape, if the utilities are improved, businesses will come. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind with urban renewal is that they can also take on debt. And I won't get too much into this, but that's one of the things that makes urban renewal districts powerful is that they can take out a loan without anyone voting, without requiring any sort of approval, and then pay back that debt using that extra tax value. And that is a big deal. Like, that is exactly how the city of Twin Falls has improved and expanded their water treatment facilities in order to accommodate a massive user like Chobani. And so that ability to run the credit card and then pay it back later with, we're going to run the credit card to build this new wastewater plant, but we're going to get X million more in tax revenue from Chobani building a factory that'll pay off the loan. It's like equivalent to, okay, I'm going to run the credit card, but I just got a new job, so that gave me a raise, or I added a second job, so that enables me to pay it down.
So that's the situation. We've level set where urban renewal is in Idaho, kind of the conversations that are happening around it. Let's dive into this piece of legislation that's been signed into law now. We'll start with kind of the easiest or simplest prong of this three-part bill, and this has to do with dissolution of urban renewal districts. So if a city doesn't want their urban renewal district anymore, what does this bill allow them to do, and how's that different from the status quo?
So this bill created a more detailed process for how cities could choose to dissolve an urban renewal district or an urban renewal agency. And the way that this works is that if a city wants to dissolve, they have to have a meeting with the urban renewal agency members that are appointed by the mayor, and they have to have a discussion about it. And then the city council can then make the decision. And it just requires them to meet with each other, come up with a plan. Now, an agency can't be dissolved if there's outstanding debt. So the city of Twin Falls still could not say, we're going to just get rid of this whole urban renewal district because we don't like it anymore whenever they've run that credit card.
Mm-hmm. So if there's an outstanding bond for a wastewater improvement, we need to make sure that gets paid off.
Right. And so this just lays out all kinds of a more detailed process for how that dissolution could happen. And this was something that cities and urban renewal, the urban renewal group, the industry group that supports all the URDs around the state.
The Redevelopment Association of Idaho?
Yes, I was struggling to come up with their name out of thin air. They opposed this because they said, hey, this is, possibly opening the door to districts and agencies, work just getting stopped in the middle, opening the door to making it easier to dissolve these agencies and stop things whenever, because as we know, elections happen, and there could become a whole new majority on a city council that is like, yeah, we're over urban renewal, we don't want to do it anymore. And Majority Leader Jason Monks, who brought this bill, his counter-argument was, cities create urban renewal agencies, they should be able to get rid of them. And that should be in their powers, and it's important to lay out that process so they have that ability to oversee this work and to choose to end it as long as there's not outstanding bonds.
And that's something we've seen in state code in multiple policy areas. There'll be, we're going to set up this new thing, so we write the code and have all the details of how to set it up, and then those original bill drafters don't necessarily have a dissolution process in mind. So Monks portrayed this as making sure there's a process. How have the cities and the redevelopment agencies reacted now that it's gone into law? Are there any fireworks gone off? Any issues it's caused?
I'm not aware of anything yet, but usually what we'll see is it takes a couple years for changes like this to really prove out and to see what the impact is. We could go through this and basically nothing changes. Cities want to keep these districts or agencies, or they don't. Or, it really won't be that big a deal. Or we could see, especially as Idaho continues to get more conservative, and typically conservative lawmakers tend to be more against urban renewal, there could be a flip to wanting to end more of these partnerships. So I'm going to be curious to see, what happens with that, especially as things continue to grow and Idaho is caught in this tension between wanting to grow and wanting to have a great economy that supports businesses, and urban renewal agencies and districts do that, and this push towards the most conservative ideals possible and how to have government be as limited as possible. And those things sometimes can be in conflict because oftentimes businesses really rely on economic development initiatives to come to a place and to start.
Speaking of which, let's move on to the next prong of this bill, which has to do with large industrial users or property owners who are in an urban renewal district where the property in that district is owned by just the one user. And kind of the prime example of this is Chobani and their big industrial plant out in Twin Falls. Talk to me about this part of the bill and what it will allow Twin Falls and other cities with big industrial users like this to do.
So urban renewal really helped. I think I've heard the phrase Magic Valley Miracle to describe the Chobani plant opening, because it created all of these jobs and then also created a purchaser for all of the dairy products in the Magic Valley. Just created this juice, just juiced up the economy. And the way that this happened is they created this urban renewal district and they used that to bond out for money for the improvements. The only customer in this district is Chobani. And so this bill, what it's doing is allowing a district to expand its life, because these districts can only go on for 20 years.
When they're first set up.
When they're first set up. That's an important thing. This isn't in perpetuity. The idea is this district does its thing, and then the district is removed, and everything is great and happy, and all that increased tax revenue goes back to all the taxing districts. But what happens if a company wants to expand? Well, we're in the middle of our term, and this thing has got to end. So this bill would allow districts like Chobani that have one large industrial user to expand their life if they want to expand. And so Chobani recently announced, I think, a $500 million expansion in Twin Falls, which is, again, really big deal economically for the region and for everyone who works in that area. But they needed that extra money to bond to build the wastewater plant and the water treatment plant to handle the demand. And so this bill would allow that expansion of a district's life in these very specific circumstances. And the lobbyist for Chobani was speaking to legislators in the hearing saying, we need this this is the key to this expansion.
Because it's not fair to all the regular residents of Twin Falls to make them pay for this big wastewater improvement that only the factory is going to be using. So this new provision in the law would allow them to redraw or to expand the boundaries of that district. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, it would just lengthen the life. It would
Okay.
just add more years to the district. In order to have more time to take out another bond and pay back another loan.
Okay, gotcha.
Something to keep in mind is that, okay, let's say that they don't want to do this. This bill didn't pass. Okay, the city of Twin Falls can still take out debt to build a new wastewater plant, to build a new water treatment plant to accompany Chobani, but they would have to go to the voters and get a 2/3 approval in order to take out that debt. Now, anyone who's paid attention to local elections in Idaho knows that getting that 2/3 of people to give a thumbs up to say, yes, take out debt and raise my taxes to pay it back, even if it's a small amount, that is a big ask.
Whether it's a school building, a fire department, all police station, all these bond issues are quite difficult to pass with that 2/3 threshold.
Right. And so this is a way to ensure, to give, the people who argue for it say this is a way to give that certainty that that expansion can happen and the debt can get paid and it gets paid by Chobani and their tax revenue, as opposed to saying, hey, resident of Twin Falls, will you pay an extra $20 a year on your taxes to build this wastewater treatment plant for Chobani?
Okay, well, third and final prong of this bill that I want to talk to you about, this was, I think, probably the most controversial or contentious part of this bill, has to do with fire districts. And the way that Representative Monks portrayed it is when we set up these urban renewal districts, there's this new growth, and because fire districts are a taxing district like all the others, they are excluded from the increased revenue from that growth that stays in the urban renewal district. So this bill would allow fire districts in the future to say, we don't want our revenue to be captured by the urban renewal district, right? Walk me through this change.
Yeah, so this bill would allow fire districts to, in the future, whenever we set up new urban renewal districts, to take a look and go, yeah, we're opting out. We're not giving up our extra tax revenue. The example that I believe it was the Nampa Fire District chief gave was the 10 Mile development over in Meridian. Now, 10 Mile is, that's where you drive by on the highway and you see all those tall office buildings. There's Topgolf over there.
All that stuff that used to be empty fields a couple years ago.
Right, that used to be an empty field. And whenever something goes from an empty field to not an empty field overnight, people start calling the police. And they start calling 911 for medical emergencies, fires, all these things. And the fire department still has to respond to all this new stuff. But their tax revenue, they're not realizing the increase of that revenue that goes along with increased responsibility.
They don't have the resources for the increased demand, yeah.
Yeah, and that causes a struggle. And it's important to lay out that fire districts in particular are really struggling in the Western Treasure Valley with this sprawling suburban development because it's popping up so quickly and it's so spread out, so far apart, that it's there's all kinds of demand. Meridian has the same issues about how the heck are we going to fund the people and the fire stations and the equipment to serve all of these new customers that have popped up almost overnight. And this is especially difficult for fire districts that are almost entirely reliant on property tax revenue. And so that was the issue that Representative Monks wanted to solve with bringing this bill. Now, critics are saying, okay, great, but if we keep carving out pieces of taxing districts that get to keep their money, like I said, if my memory serves correctly, highway districts already have this ability, then if we're taking out pieces of the pie, everyone gets to keep their slice of pie, well then what's left for the urban renewal district to actually build anything with or do anything with and to achieve its goals? And so there's these competing priorities of, well, gosh, we've still got to build all the roads to serve these areas. We've still got to go help people when they have a heart attack. We still got to do all these things. But if you're taking our tax revenue for 20 years to do it, that's a tough pill to swallow. And I think that, by packaging up all these pieces together, the reforms on how to more, give cities the ability to close down a district, how to end the Chobani piece, and then this fire district piece. It's almost like, I think of it like a smoothie that has some broccoli in it for people, where there might be people who are really pro-economic development who don't want to take away that extra tax revenue that would go to a fire district under this bill, but they don't want to say no to Chobani. They don't want to be the one to tank the Chobani project, so they're going to drink that smoothie that has the broccoli or the kale in it. And I think this was a strategically well-written bill that had all kinds of pieces in it that some people loved and other people were skeptical out, and by tying them all together, I think it made it a difficult bill to say no to.
Well, certainly not the first time we've seen that out of the House.
Definitely not.
So just to make sure before we leave here that I've got this right. So in the future, if there's a city that's covered by a fire district and they want to set up an urban renewal district that does not exist yet, they will have to ask the fire district whether they want to be included within that district or not. How's that process supposed to work?
Right. So the fire district they can choose, and they might be able to say, yeah, you know what? That won't be really that big a deal. We will participate. We think it's a good idea to forfeit our revenue for this particular project. Or they might say, yeah, no, we need the money to serve this new development. They get to make that decision. What the bill also does is for existing districts, it allows fire districts to opt out only if bonds are not outstanding. Like that credit card has not been run. They can say, yeah, we need the money. We're gonna opt out of this process. And so it creates a decision point for fire districts. And those are likely going to be made with their commissioners and their chiefs and their staff.
Okay. Well, we will keep an eye on 2026 and see if there are any further reforms to the urban renewal scheme here in Idaho coming down the pipeline. In the meantime, you can read all of Margaret's wonderful reporting at boisedev.com. Margaret, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Idaho Reports podcast. Tune in to the Friday show at 8 p.m. on Idaho Public Television, and visit idahoreports.org to stream episodes and keep up to date with the events of the 2025 legislative session.
Programming support is provided by the Idaho Humanities Council, deepening understanding of the shared human experience by connecting people with ideas and local public programs exploring history, law, literature, and citizenship through the humanities.
Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.